Hello and welcome everyone to Copy and Paste, the clean and family-friendly Reddit reading podcast. This is the 8th episode of r/ProRevenge, where the revenge is always sweet. And don't forget, if you like this podcast, then it would be greatly appreciated for you to like and subscribe. Thank you for joining me. Okay, let's get started. And the first post by user /asmodous. Parties involved. Store manager, name used is MO. Thieving assistant manager, name used is J. Lead assistant manager, name used is Travis. So this story happened about 6 years ago, when I worked for a retail company I'll call No-Op. J was well known to be a thief by the base staff and some of the lower levels of management. Unfortunately, she was a golden girl to Mo and Travis, and we never had any solid proof. We also didn't get pay docked, etc., unless it was over a certain amount, which it never was. So staff never had a real incentive to try and find proof. One of Jay's favorite things to steal were vouchers for money off products or shopping, because you were just supposed to rip them up and put them in the safe. There was no official way of counting these to return them to the company, so she could use them again in a different store and get away with it. This particular day was Halloween, and I was on till 4, the only till with no cameras on it. Mo came up and paid for her shopping with some gift vouchers she had received at a store manager's meeting, because the store was doing really well. I served her, and no one else touched my till all day, because I was the main person on the tills for this shift. We closed up for the night, and Jay took the registered to be cashed up. I went out to the pub with friends and had a good night, not knowing what was coming. The next shift, I'm on. Mo calls me into the office and tells me that the vouchers she used were not in the safe, and she knew that it was my till. She wanted me to return the vouchers and would not press charges or put anything in my file if I just returned them immediately. I, of course, did not have them and testified as such, but she didn't believe me. I went looking everywhere. The bin under till 4 and the bins outside, under the tills and on the floor around the tills, just in case I dropped them or put them somewhere down while trying to sort out cash, etc. Roughly an hour later, Jay comes in, hears what's going on, and offers to look as well. She finds them in 30 seconds flat, somewhere I'd already looked. I essentially hissed out, "What a coincidence!" that as soon as Jay looks, she finds it immediately. How coincidental. See thing with white fury, as I knew she was now framing me for her own theft. She could have found them in the office and made a simple mistake, but no, she made me the fall guy for her own idiocy. I tried to plead my case to Mo and Travis, saying that I wouldn't be dumb enough to steal vouchers that I knew were Mo's, because I was the one who served her. One of the other team leaders, Paul, knew fine and well it was Jay, and tried to tell Mo and Travis that I was being set up. But she was the golden girl and couldn't do no wrong, while my name was mud as far as they were concerned. Heck, they thought Jay had caught me in the act. This meant war. Over the next few months, I got really friendly with Jay, flirting outrageously with her and basically pretending like I really respected her and that we were good buddies. It took me a while to work my way into her trust, but once I was there, I knew I could catch her stealing and prove it. We wasted off a load of Christmas chocolate products that hadn't sold, and I put them in a bag to be put in the bin. Jay said we should take them home against company policy and seen as stealing, because they were just going to waste otherwise. We were stood underneath the camera, just outside of its range, so I said, "I don't want any, but if you want them, you can have them," and put them on a trolley just inside of the camera's range. I'd studied the camera angles in great detail, preparing for a moment exactly like this. I saw her look at the camera, down at the trolley, and back to the camera before walking off to get her stuff. I warned my colleagues not to take any of the chocolate even if offered, and had an evil grin on my face, which my colleagues commented on. When Jay came down, she nonchalantly picked up the bag as if it was her shopping, offered chocolate to everyone, and walked out the door with it. Gotcha. The next morning, I arrived for my shift and put on the most sombre face possible as I approached Travis. You should check the cameras on the back door at approximately 22:21. I think you'll find what you see very interesting. He asked me to explain further, and I looked over towards where Jay was, not even 5 meters away, and looked back. I can't go into further detail right now, but I would strongly suggest you go and look at the cameras for that time now. Travis begrudgingly walked off to do just that, and within 10 minutes, Jay was called into the office and her bag was searched. Within the hour, she was suspended pending investigation, and within the week, she was fired and barred from the store. I got a full apology from the managers who didn't believe me, who explained they genuinely believed it was me and had no idea Jay could have possibly been a thief. Their jaws hit the floor after I explained that every member of staff knew she was a thief, but that we didn't feel like we could do anything about it. After going around asking people if this was true, I got another apology. 6 months later, I was offered training to become a team leader myself. I took it, but ended up quitting for a white-collar role in a different company before I finished my training. What a story. And the second post by user/Von Scranhammer. Military revenge story. This was back in 2013 when I was based in Holland, British Marine for context. I'd been married to my wife for a little over 18 months when I deployed to Afghanistan. My wife had a job in the British delegation on base and got to know pretty much every Brit and their husband/wife. One day we were directly targeted by a vehicle-borne IED. Now, whilst it wasn't uncommon for there to be a threat to coalition forces in general, being directly targeted felt more personal for obvious reasons. That was also the day I found out about a RAF guy back in Holland had tried it on with my wife. I found him on Facebook and messaged him words to the effect of, "If you go near Mrs. Von Scranhammer again, I will put glass in your throat the next time I see you." The next day, one of my bosses, who is also RAF, messaged me on Facebook to say that this guy has been over to his office and basically tattled on me. He gave me a friendly warning/heads up that this guy could have gone to the MPs and reported me. I have no idea what would have happened, but I acknowledged the warning and said it won't happen again. My boss had my back and actually told him to wind his neck. Fast forward to when I got back from Afghanistan. A few days had passed and I was starting to settle in to a normal life again. My wife brought it up after explaining she didn't mention it at the time due to my reaction the first time. That was an Army Sergeant Major had tried to message her via Facebook. He told her she was beautiful and wanted her number. She promptly blocked him. I was pissed off to say the least, but I understand why she kept it until I was back on home soil. The next day I went into our department and spoke to my other boss, an army captain. I told him what happened, and he said, "Leave it with me." He basically had a chat with him, and nothing came of it. I felt deflated, and even more pissed off. That was until our senior military officer came into our department. He welcomed me back, and asked how my tour was. Still pissed off, I said, "It was good, sir," with the exception of Sergeant Major Douchebag trying to get round my wife. He was understandably a little taken aback. About an hour or so later, he emailed me, saying that he feels the need to do something official about this. Something I'd forgotten was that the colonel and sergeant major belonged to the same regiment, so having one of his own behave like this had clearly gripped him. I told him the full story, and provided screenshots of what Sergeant Major Douchebag had said to Mrs. Von Scranhammer. For this to go official, my wife had to provide a statement. Unfortunately, Mrs. Von Scranhammer is very non-confrontational and said she didn't want this to continue. I respected her wishes of not wanting to provide a statement, but hatched a plan that'd be 3 years in the making. The timing is important. I emailed the colonel and said that Mrs. Von Scranhammer has declined. However, I felt the need for some formal recognition, so I asked the Sergeant Major Douchebag write a letter of apology, addressed to both my wife and I, which is to be signed and dated. This was granted, and I received said letter 2 days later. It said, "Lance Corporal and Mrs. Von Scranhammer, I'm writing this letter to you both to apologize for my torment and anxiety that you both must have felt from the messages that you received from my Facebook account. To Mrs. Von Scranhammer, Nobody should ever be in a situation where they worry about going to work because of who may come through the door, especially so when they have added the stress of a partner being operationally deployed at the time. The anguish that you must have felt at this time is immeasurable, and for this, I apologize. I regret any hurt or anguish caused by this issue and apologize wholeheartedly and unreservedly to you both. Signed, Sergeant Major Douchebag, position held. I now waited. I saw the rest of the time in Holland, moved back to the UK, to my new base, and waited some more. Almost 3 years after I received the apology letter, I looked up Sergeant Major Douchebag's wife on Facebook. I had known the whole time we were out there that he was married. His wife lived back in the UK, and he has routinely tried to cheat on her. I sent her the same screenshot which I had sent to the Colonel. I also, before leaving Holland, printed off the emails between the Colonel and myself, where I requested the apology letter. I blanked out the Colonel's details and sent the pictures of that. And then lastly, I sent a picture of the apology letter, signed and dated by her husband admitting what he had done. Once I saw she had read it, I blocked her, blocked Sergeant Major Douchebag and all his friends, who had also been out in Holland at the same time. Why 3 years? I remember him saying, before he turned into a douchebag and tried it on with my wife, that he had only 3 years left to serve. If my timing was correct, he was months away for completing his 22 years and receiving a very nice pension. If his wife decided to go ahead with the divorce, she would take half of said pension, which would essentially screw him over for the rest of his life. Unfortunately, that was it for today. If you enjoyed this podcast, then I would greatly appreciate for you to like and subscribe. To listen to this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or on more platforms, or to visit any of my socials, click the link in the description, and please feel free to send me an audio message or leave a comment. It's been a pleasure. Goodbye!